Welcome to ApexThis.Podcast, a chronicle of my journey to start a publishing side business. This will be a behind-the-scenes look at what I'm doing to make that happen. I'll share tips and best practices that I learn along the way. Tips that you can use to start your very own indie publishing journey and share your voice with the world. Coming up, what's in quarter 3? The end of June was a busy one as I needed to plan Q3 of 2020. And as such, I wanted to share what Q3 looks like as I start back to what Apex This was supposed to be 3 years ago. A quick reminder of my process. I do plan yearly by outlining what I want my focus to be and what I would like to have produced by the year's end. I then take this and break it up into milestones or quarters. And then I break down the quarters to months and months to weeks and then your day to day. In all of this, I do work on themed days where I bulk the work that I need to do. So if I'm actively writing, there are specific days in the week that I tailor to writing. If there's any podcast or video related stuff, there's a specific day for that. I find that this is easier when I'm planning out my task as I know what days I can dedicate to that task and I can bulk all associated work on that particular day. So what's in Q3? Here's going to be a breakdown of what I want to focus on for Q3 of this year. We will run through the defined focus for each month, and any follow-up of these items will be done in a monthly update episode. If you've been listening before, you're kind of used to those. Do note that the things that I will list is only for Apex This projects and does not contain any other endeavors that I'm involved in. So let's get started. For July, I estimated an available 92 hours to work on side projects. This time was then broken down for the items I chose to focus on for Apex This. And again, excluding minor things that may pop up for Apex This, the hours or the things that I list are going to be the major items that I want to focus on. And we're going to break this out into 2 categories, a primary focus and a secondary focus. For the primary July focus, we of course have Project Dollar with a word count goal of 26,000 words and a budget of 34 hours. I did create a YouTube video on planning for Camp NaNoWriMo, which is Project Dollar. And I break down and you see how I came to the particular days that I would write, as well as the word count I would need to target for the month for this pre-existing project, as well as how many hours I can dedicate to it. Then we have the Mixtape Manuscript with a budget of 5 hours. Now, I've talked a little bit about this before, but Mixtape is a small chapbook poetry collection kind of experiment. And I'm in the process of doing the second revisions now and hoping to finalize the manuscript before we get into the pre-publication stages. My secondary focus for July is the Apex This podcast. And my goal is to produce 2 episodes, and that's a total budget of 12 hours. And next is YouTube video, 1 video with a budget of 6 hours. Now, I may be biting off more than I can chew, but I hope I am able to produce the 2 podcast episodes a month, one of which will be the monthly update episode of what are the results of my focus for the month and the goals that I was trying to hit. And then another episode focused on a particular topic, maybe just a light something to think about and or a deep dive regarding writing and publishing. YouTube is, even though I already have some stuff up, it's going to vary the content that I try to put there. I know that some of the content is going to be repurposed from the podcast. So that's going to be an experimental platform as well, and we can see what we can do with it. Moving on to August. For August, I estimated an available 106 hours for side projects. The primary focus for August is going to be mixtape formatting and revising a short story I wrote called Waited. I'm hoping that I can finish editing the mixtape in July or early August, and that way I can spend my time formatting mixtape in preparation for publishing. Waited is a short story I wrote in June as a break from leaving Austin Podcasters and to get me back into the process of writing creatively. Since I've toyed with the idea of actually publishing this under Apex This, as such, I've moved this personal project onto the Apex This roster for further development, which means revising and edits and everything. The secondary focus for August is a mailing list, website prototype, 2 ApexThis.Podcast episodes, and 1 YouTube video. For the mailing list, I want to research mailing lists for Apex This and see if it's something that would be worthwhile, something that I should do at least on a monthly or maybe a quarterly basis. I also want to update the website as it's sorely needed. Thus, I want to spend some time in August prototyping what I actually want to build, what it'll look like, and everything. And then, as always, what's always going to be on a monthly secondary focus are 2 podcast episodes and 1 video. The last month in the quarter is going to be September with a budget of 90 hours. My primary focus is going to be edit and revise Project Dollar. So, of course, this is with the expectation that I hit the total word count for this book. I know it's going to be a small book, but if I hit the total word count and feel that the story is actually finished, well, that's my hope by the end of July and maybe sometime in August that I can then have a little bit of a break from it and go back and start revising it. I'm also hoping that I can finish the revisions on Mixtape, the formatting on Mixtape, and publish it sometime in September. And then lastly, as a primary focus, is putting the short story Waited into an external edit and booking an illustration for this piece. Now, at this point, it's pretty far out. It's September. I do think all those items for the primary focus are going to be wishful thinking. So I know that this can change and likely will change, but that's currently what I'm shooting for. As a secondary focus, I hope to have the website redesigned. So based off the prototyping in August, I'll spend the September actually updating the website, coding it, doing everything, and then publishing the final structure and existence of the website. Pretty far off from the rebrand that I did in December 2019, launching it in January 2020. So, of course, several months later, we'll do a website rebrand to take on those colors and everything else that I've pulled into it. And then, obviously, we end the secondary focus with 2 episodes of the ApexThis.Podcast and 1 YouTube video. So the projects throughout Q3, July, August, and September that I will be working on are Project Dollar, Mixtape, and Waited. And those are the writing related projects, with the secondary projects being the podcast, YouTube, and website. I do think that these will get booted to Q4, as this is the first quarter where I am primarily focused on Apex This projects, and thus I'm working out my cadence and throughput, as the primary work is writing. The time can shrink or expand based on how focused I am in the moment of writing. And that is how Q3 has been shaped and planned. I will be tweaking each month as I enter it, depending on the progress made on the previous month's items. These items do exclude other outside responsibilities, such as my actual day job, other projects, social life, health, and more. So if you're curious about the tools I use, I have put up a video on YouTube for my Q3 planning session that shows kind of the tools that I use and how I actually enter this data within those tools for my planning session. So be sure to check that out at ApexThis.com/YouTube. In the next episode, we will have a July monthly update with the results for the items I chose to focus on. I will be talking about how Camp NaNoWriMo went, what my goals were for Camp Nano, and if I succeeded or not. So be sure to tune in for that. You can follow Apex This on the interwebs at Twitter and Instagram at ApexThis. Everything mentioned in the show notes is available in your podcast app, or you can go to ApexThis.com. And that's all I got for you. Until next time.